Let's talk about GotY Crunch and what that's like on a YouTube channel, and how even if we did have more people, it wouldn't change that GotY Crunch is probably something that needs to change in the industry. When you cover video games for a living, it's expected that you are going to talk about all of the new games. Now, unfortunately, beating games takes time. And time is something that is very limited for most of our lives. There's only so much time in a day. And you can say, well, it's because you're just not dedicating enough time to the channel. You're dedicating too much time to your personal life. You should be fixing that. But there's just too many games that need to be covered for even that to be true. Even if I just worked on beating games 24 hours a day, which is not how that works when you run a YouTube channel. There's a lot of back-end stuff that has to be done. There still wouldn't be enough time. And this is not a complaint, right? I love my job. I love being able to do this job. I love that I get paid to cover video games. It's something I never thought I would be able to do, and it's amazing. It's wonderful. But you might say, well, Trey, it's because your streams are doing all this other stuff. You should just stream video games every week. Just every day of the week, just stream video games for like 30 hours and you're good. Even then, it still wouldn't be enough. There are so many games that all require time, right? That all require a heavy time investment, not just to play the game. It's not just playing the game and beating the game. Playing the game and beating the game is what gets you terrible reviews, right? It's understanding the game. It's putting the time in to figure out how the game systems work. Then it's recording the script, recording the audio for the script, redoing any mistakes. Then it's compiling all the footage together, rendering it all together, cutting it all together. Then it's uploading it and all the back-end stuff that comes with running a YouTube channel. And again, I'm not complaining here. I just feel like as an industry, GotY Crunch has become the standard, and I think it needs to stop. I understand this video is not going to change anything, but when we look at GotY Crunch, sites like IGN, sites like Kotaku, sites like Polygon, sites like Rock, Paper, Shotgun, you just go down the list, right? Any of the big names, they have a whole team. They have a whole team. And even then, that team is having to crunch. And this is where I say, again, I'm not complaining. I'm not just trying to say, well, they have a team and it's just me over here. No. Even then, they have to crunch. And when you're crunching, you're not able to enjoy the games as much as you would otherwise. It absolutely takes away. I beat Xenoblade Chronicles 3, maybe my favorite game of this year, and I still hadn't finished all of the side quests I wanted to finish. I still hadn't finished all the other things I needed to get done, because there is an expectation when you cover video games that you're going to get the review out in a pretty reasonable amount of time. And I want to walk you back through this year, because I said last year I wasn't going to go to Crunch. But I said I wasn't going to go to Crunch because I believed I had enough time throughout last year that I wouldn't have to go to Crunch, right? That throughout this whole year of 2022, I'll just play all the games that come out as they come out, and then we won't have to worry about it. Yeah, about that. Too many games come out. And it gets to a point where, especially like solo people or small teams, like what we have here, cannot afford to cover all the games, let alone the time to be able to cover them all. But even the big outlets don't have the time to cover everything. And when we look at this last year, I didn't finish Pokemon Legends Arceus until this month. And it's not that I didn't finish it because, oh, it's just such a long game. It's because it came out, and I put a bunch of time into it, almost finished it, but not quite. And then Elden Ring came out, and so I put a bunch of time into Elden Ring and finished it. And you may say, well, why'd you stop playing Arceus to play Elden Ring? Is it because Elden Ring's just a better game? I like Elden Ring more, but that's not why. But Elden Ring's a bigger release, and the sooner I beat it, the sooner I get the review out. The sooner I get the review out, the better it does in the algorithm, the more I get paid. You say, well, then it's all just about the money. Well, no, if it was all just about the money, I wouldn't have gone back and finished Pokemon Legends Arceus in December and spent those hours to finish that game when it's well past the time to talk about it, right? It's not just about the money, but when you're on YouTube, when you're on Twitch, there is an incentive to cover the new hotness. And that leads to, all right, well, I'm going to focus on this then. I'm going to focus on the new hotness. And then the old stuff that's still important, that still needs to be covered at GotY time, It's dropped away. I started playing Guild Wars 2 this year with the intention to get to End of Dragons and be able to cover End of Dragons, much like I covered Endwalker for FF14 last year, because it's a big MMO release for the year. I want to get to cover it. And so I spent most of the year playing Guild Wars, and I didn't make it to End of Dragons by the end of the year. Because I was also trying to play Final Fantasy Origins Strangers in Paradise. I was also trying to play Tunic. I was also trying to play Elden Ring. I was also trying to play Xenoblade. I was also trying to play Digimon Survive. I was also trying to play Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. I was also trying to beat Darktide. You just go down the list. It's just too much for anybody to be expected to beat them all. And that's where it all comes down to for GotY Crunch for me, is it's expected that you've beaten them all. When you cover Game of the Year, when I talk about Vampire Survivors at the end of the year, I'm going to get a comment in my GotY video that is, why didn't Stray get any awards? Because I didn't play Stray. Why didn't you play Stray? Well, I didn't have time to play Stray. And so it leads, as a reviewer, it leads me to believe that I need to try and grasp and get all these games beaten, or put at least enough time into them that I can talk about them, when there's just not enough time for that. Triangle Strategy looked really cool. I didn't have time to go back and play it this year. Fire Emblem Three Hopes was really fun, and I love Dynasty Warriors style games. I want to go back and put more time into that game, but I didn't have time to do it. I haven't beaten Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, even though I love that style of game, and I get to run around as Space Marines. It's Grey Knights, but still, it's Space Marines. I didn't beat it. I just didn't have time. Say, well, Trey, you could be playing one of those games right now instead of making this video. The time it's going to take to make this video is not going to be equivalent to beating one of those games. But there is an expectation of, hey, why is God of War Ragnarok not in your GOTYs? Because I didn't play it. I'm going to have to specify at the start of the video that I never touched God of War Ragnarok. I never touched Last of Us Part 1 Remake. I never touched Stray. Because people are going to be in the comment section going, look at this idiot. And you say, well, just ignore them. Well, sure. But can I ignore that part of me that feels like I let people down by not playing all the games? And that's where GotY Crunch comes from. It's the expectation and the feeling that I let you down, viewer. Because I didn't play the game that you think is the best game of 2022. And that's why GotY Crunch has to stop. You say, well, the big outlets aren't going to stop doing it. I don't have any power over anybody first, but let alone the big outlets. But I can give you a different perspective, viewer. Stop expecting your favorite reviewers to have played every game. Should your favorite reviewer have played a lot of games? Absolutely. If your favorite reviewer hasn't beaten 10 games over the course of the year that came out that year, probably shouldn't make a top 10 of 2022 of games that came out that year. But they absolutely can still talk about the games they did beat. If your favorite reviewer only beat games this year that came out in previous years, that doesn't mean they can't still make a top 10. That doesn't mean they can't still cover video games this year. And you shouldn't expect every reviewer to play every game. And I'm not saying that you personally, viewer, do, but a lot of people do. I still get comments on the GotY videos that are like, what about this game? Why didn't you talk about this game? And it is unreasonable to expect every reviewer to have beaten every major game that came out this year. It is unreasonable, I think, to expect any reviewer to be able to beat more than 10 in a year. Because there's a lot of work that goes into it. Now, if they work for a bigger publication and the bigger publication handles all the editing and they just have to send the script of recorded audio over and the video that they captured, sure, maybe. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. A regular review, a 10-minute review for Vampire Survivors that went up earlier in the week, took me probably 4 hours to cut together. And that's not even counting all of the work that went into getting that. All the video capture, all the audio, all the redoing that script, beating that game, which took 34 hours, you know? There's a lot more work that goes into it than most people think. And at the end of the day, I can't stop other outlets from doing crunch, but I can ask you as the viewer to stop expecting crunch. And this is where I will say publicly on this channel, we're not doing it next year. I had a situation that came up, and I know I said that last year, But last year I thought I could beat all the games, and I couldn't. I had a situation that came up because I was doing GotY Crunch. The holidays are coming up. I had work with my other job, and so I was staying up most nights to be able to beat Xenoblade. And again, I'm not trying to complain here, but I had a situation that came up where I almost got into a car accident. I almost fell asleep while I was driving. GotY Crunch has to stop. And I think all crunch should stop. I think crunch in development studios should stop as well. But we can't expect people to stop living their life just to beat video games so that they can review them for us. And it's not just GotY Crunch either. Review crunch happens when a new game comes out. You feel like you have to beat it as soon as possible so you can get the review out as soon as possible. And I think it creates worse reviews and it puts reviewers in worse places. It's got to stop. So we're not doing it next year. It's not happening. I know I mentioned again that in a podcast last year, hey, we're not going to do it. It's not happening this next year. And if it means that we don't cover a game that you wanted us to cover, I'm sorry. I really, truly am. GotY Crunch has to stop. And I'm not just saying this because it's affected my life. It's affected a lot of reviewers' lives. Burnout is really bad on YouTube already, but burnout among YouTube reviewers, among all reviewers really, is terrible. You go from project to project to project to project. And that's why we mix it up here on the channel. We do first impressions, just checking out games. And maybe that's all the coverage a game ever gets. We do like weird one-offs or games that I enjoy, and that's what we cover. We have our streams that are about a bunch of different stuff. That's to put off burnout. Because when you go from project to project to project to project, burnout is a real thing that happens very often. And it's something we have to fight against here on this channel all the time. Stop expecting reviews day 1 or day 3. Stop expecting GOTYs to have every game that came out that year covered. Because it's not going to happen on this channel, at least. We're going to review things in a reasonable time, but we're not going to kill ourselves trying to get those reviews done, And at the end of the day, some of you are going to be disappointed. Some of you are going to feel like this is what we should have been doing the whole time. I felt like we needed to take an official stance on this. I'm not doing it next year. I can't do it next year. I can't physically do it anymore. And maybe it's just, hey, Trey, you're getting old, ha ha ha. But I can't work all through the night while working all through the day and it still work out, So it's a weird rambly topic, I know. But next year, we're going to beat what we beat. That's what's going to get covered at GOTYs. I'm not going to worry about it. Because I worried about it all December so far. And it has affected everything else in my life. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not the only one. I've talked to a couple different reviewers that feel exactly the same way. They didn't want to be named in this video because they're afraid that it'll, look bad on their outlets. But, stop expecting every reviewer to have played every game. Stop expecting every reviewer to have beat every game. I still believe you should beat a game before you review it. 100%. But GotY Crunch is just a net negative to this industry. And all it does is hurt games, reviewers, and it hurts consumers. So let me know your thoughts on this very strange topic. I know there'll be a lot of people that are like, why'd you even make this video? But I think it's important to talk about. This is an important discussion to be had because I think most of the time we just look at it from, I played this game. I love this game. Why aren't they talking about this game? Why didn't they play this game? When maybe they didn't have time. Maybe they did have time and they just chose not to. That's on them, I guess. But maybe they didn't have time. So don't assume they did have time. Assume maybe they spent that time on something else. But again, it's just me. Let me know your thoughts. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always do the full spectrum. I tripped over that completely. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum retake. Life has to offer.